besties, welcome back or welcome if you're new. My name is Cayenne and this is Cayenne is Booked. So we are continuing our series of book besties or Booksta besties, pick my TBR. And today we're featuring Jodie, which is, her handle is Books Happen on Instagram, and I'll link her below. So you should definitely give her a follow. I absolutely love her. I love her content. I love gossiping with her when she posts random stories and such. So she gave me a TBR, and it's 3 books that she gave me. And I was a little nervous about one of them, so I read it first. And I'm not nervous for the reasons that everybody would think I would be nervous. And what I mean by that is I'm just going to go ahead and it's Lights Out by Nevessa Allen. Nevessa Allen, and it's the first book in the Into Darkness Into Darkness series. And this is a probably smut edition, and it's really funny because I opened this book before this book really started going viral. So I opened it when it got delivered, and I was like, what book is this? Why would I want to keep this? This doesn't even look interesting, right? So I had it in the pile to de-stash it, and that was before Jodie picked this one, right? And so I'm really glad I did de-stash it, and I'm actually really excited to keep it because I'm hoping that when the next book comes out, they'll do the next book, obviously, and then I'll have a really cool matching set. So what is this, right? So this has a really a whole lot to do with, what do we call it? Mask talk. So if you're on the old TikTok and you kind of the masked men or whatevs, so the main character Allie starts to follow this guy on TikTok, and he never takes his mask off or whatever, but he essentially posts thirst traps. And we know him to be Josh, who is our male main character, and then Allie's obviously our female main character. She is a nurse in an emergency room in a part of the city that sees a lot of trauma and a lot of cases. I think we open the book with it being this mass shooting that happens at one of the malls, and they have so many victims that come in. They lose a lot of people, and she goes on to TikTok and as a way to disconnect and to drown out what's happening in her life as a ER nurse. And Josh is actually the one that she's kind of obsessed with, and ends up being that they've already met before and they have a connection. So Josh was wow, I really thought she was super hot when I met her, and I really liked her and I was really attracted to her, but there was a reason behind why he wasn't able to, wasn't able to move forward with things with her. And obviously we find out within the story why that's the case, right? So fast forward to Josh breaking into her house, doing a thirst trap in her room, her figuring it out, and then starting this really kind of wild relationship through instant messaging and all of that, before they really have the conversation of who he is to her and in person, right? I devoured this book. I definitely read it within 24 hours. So I read half of it, had to go to work, tragic, came home, read the other half of it, stayed up past my bedtime. Really would like to meet a guy who's into potentially wearing a mask with me one day. Might be a little bit more into mask talk than I thought I was. Very interested in kind of how the main characters use it to balance their trauma. I definitely recommend, and I don't know in the regular copy, but this is a trigger warning page. I definitely recommend taking a look at the trigger warning page if you have some, because gotta be honest with you, if you have one, it's probably somewhere in this book. There were moments that I was just speechless, and then other moments that I was wait a second. I really liked how the author works through kind of how Josh's trauma has made the decision for kind of how he lives his life, and then how she plays into managing the trauma, but also to supporting him through the trauma, and not necessarily holding him accountable for things that aren't his fault, right? And that's cryptic, and I understand it's cryptic because these vlogs are not meant to be spoiler vlogs. I mean, maybe one day I'll do a spoiler vlog for this one, because I definitely see myself potentially rereading it. I really enjoyed it, and I'm very, very excited for, what do you call it? The next book. Don't know who the next book's going to be about. I think we got a hint for it, but yeah, I think we got a hint for it. But I don't want to spoil it because I really want people to have the opportunity to, what do you call it? Have the opportunity to enjoy it. I also really liked how it was like a really safe space for both of the characters. So like anytime you have like dynamics where one person's a dominant versus a submissive, or where one person gives up complete control to the other person, you know, like you kind of always worry about like consent and what that type of relationship looks like. But I thought that the author, and obviously two our main characters, did a really great job of like kind of balancing that. So it wasn't necessarily, what am I trying to say? Like there was no real like, yes, there was a difference in dynamics, but not in a way that was detrimental to either of the characters. There we go. That's what I'm trying to say. I love Josh. I love the fact that he was hot and tatted and muscular, and he really like, he wasn't like my body is my temple, but he really took care of himself. I loved how obsessed and gone for our female main character that he was. Like listen, once he figured out who Allie was and the fact that like she was interested in him, like there wasn't anything you could tell him. And I really like how like as soon as he was able to like start caring for her and start taking care of her, that was definitely something that I loved about this book, is just like how much he wanted to care for her. And you know, like I think that's like really beautiful. Like she doesn't like necessarily need anyone, but like it was nice for her to have somebody and to like want somebody in her life, and then that person to be like so incredibly supportive of her. So if you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It's so good. Like even just talking about it, I want to go back and read it, but I'm not going to because we have to move on, guys. And by that I mean, let's talk about the next book that Jodie wants me to read, and that's going to be One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig and Maiden Monster Martyr, right? So I'm pretty sure like in the early months of 2024 that this is probably on a Hopefuls video somewhere, because I borrowed it from the library. But the hard part about like, okay, so I borrowed it from the library and I had like 20 plus days to read it, right? But every time I borrowed it, obviously there was somebody in line as a hold. So I ended up like buying a used copy off of Pingo, and I think it's a duet, so I got both of them for like 20 bucks maybe. So it didn't feel like as bad or whatever, but I definitely like, I want to stick a little bit more to like not being absolutely bananas about buying things. But there's no promises for 2025. That's neither here nor there. I really wanted to read it, didn't have the opportunity because like people at my library were so aggressive about wanting to read this book. So after I got my copy, I've kind of just been looking for a really good time to actually read it. I know this is like kind of gothic-ish. It is a fantasy. It's the first book in the Shepherd King duet. And the main character, I read like the first chapter and I was a little bit confused, but like also too, it's the first chapter, right? I do know that we're following somebody, and she's not necessarily like welcome in her own home. So she like goes and lives with like another relative. And that's really all I can remember. So rather than just make things up about this book, I'm actually gonna go read it, and then I'll come back and report back how I'm feeling about it. I don't know, 50%, 100%, who knows when I'm gonna pop back up. That's the fun thing about my vlogs, and like that's the fun thing about my channel, is that like, you know what, I could say 50% and then come back to you and be like, hey, I read the whole thing. So yes, I will be back, and I'll be back with an update on One Dark Window. Okay, so I'm here to update you. Don't mind this, I just did a library book haul, and I wanted to go ahead and do an update for this so I can go ahead and finish binging it, because I'm really having an excellent time with it so far. And now that I'm deeper into the book, like everything really makes a lot of sense now. Because like last time, I think like in the introduction, I was talking about how like I started it, but I didn't really understand what was going on and all that kind of stuff. But now that I'm deeper in the book, like I really I find myself like very much enjoying it. So Elizabeth Spindle is, so that I've only made it through part 1, which is 155 pages into the book, almost halfway, I would say. but she meets a mysterious highwayman on a forest road, takes a drastic turn. She ends up going to the equinox hosted by the king, but then she finds out who the, what do you call it, the highwayman is, and the highwayman is actually the king's nephew and like the captain of his guard. And this is like a world built on the Shepherd King and how he created these like specific cards, and each of them have magic within them, and if you don't have the card, then you can't do the magic, access the magic, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm still like fairly new in it, but I just know that there are specific cards that they've been missing for a while, and in those specific cards they have like, she has abilities because she got an infection, and people who are infected have like magical abilities, but magic always comes at a price, right? So she has these magical capabilities so that when she meets up with the captain of the guard and she finds out who he is, etc., she's like, oh, like I'm able to see cards in people's pockets. And she can, like, she's not lying about that, but there's also like a hidden layer to the magic that she has access to. And it's not something that she is wanting to tell everybody about, I guess is the best way to say it. So I'll definitely have more that I want to say. I'm trying really hard. I need to write notes before I come and update you guys again, because like I don't want to spoil it. But my heating's out, so I think this is probably a heating, guys, so I should probably go see what's going on with that. So talk to you later, friends. Okay, so I don't want to do a spoiler vlog. I really don't. I see why everybody likes this duology so much. So let's talk about the things that I can talk about. I think, hang on, let me make sure I say this correctly. I am gonna have to go grab the other book off of my shelf though. No, I don't want the acknowledgements. The last card, this is crazy. Oh, it's Providence. Okay. So one thing I really like about this series is like the concept of the Providence cards. So the fact that if you have a Providence card, it has a specific type of magic associated with the card. So like the Nightmare card, if like when you tap it 3 times, if you have it on you, or if, you know, like once you tap it, like it belongs to you type deal. So the Nightmare card is used basically essentially to like go into people's minds and be able to talk to other people and be able to like read minds or like talk to somebody within their own mind, which I really like the idea that the magic is tied to a specific card. So I think that's a really cool concept. And I don't remember reading another fantasy that has the magic tied to a card. There are like other objects, I'm pretty sure, probably if I think really hard about it, but I don't necessarily remember it being tied to a specific card, number one. So I really like that. Number 2, I like what they're trying to do. So the mist taking over the city, and it's every king's goal to, what do you call it? To get all of the Providence cards, a full deck essentially, and then to do what they need to do. Like they have this book that guides them, but essentially like return all the Providence cards as a full deck in order to eradicate like the mist and the illness that's going around their town, right? And every king before this current king has failed at that task. So I think it is interesting, like quests that we go on as a group here of like trying to look for these Providence cards, and then what leads us to the cards, and how getting that full deck and where we have them hidden and all. Like I really like the quest that we're on, so I find that to be really, really interesting. Elspeth, I love her. She's not, I don't want to say that like she's a weak female main character, because I don't think that that's fair to her character. I think, how do I put this? I am interested to see in the second book. We will be reading the second book in this vlog too. Like Jodie didn't say like, hey, I want you to read the second book, but there's no way I'm not reading the second book. So stay tuned for footage of that. I'm not necessarily going to talk about it because I'm not going to do spoilers, but like you will see me reading it in the vlog, and I may or may not like discuss about how much I love Raven. But we'll talk about that in a second. So she's kept a super dark secret her entire life, and I'm not gonna, hang on a second. Okay, so she has an ancient spirit trapped in her head, and she refers to him as Nightmare, because she doesn't know who he is, doesn't know blah, blah, blah. So anyways, she was infected, and then she spent her entire childhood with this like random dark spirit in her head, right? And from the random dark spirit situation, she finds herself like on this quest, you know, meeting Raven, who is the captain of the King's Guard, essentially. And I wouldn't say that she is a weak female main character. I would say that she spent a lifetime trying to protect herself, and a lifetime pretending to be somebody and hiding her true form, that you see her really struggle to open up, and you see her really struggle to trust those people around her, even though they're asking for that trust and they're telling her that, you know, you have this trust from us and we need this trust from you. And, you know, she was turned out by her own family, by her own dad. She lived with her uncle and her aunt, and circumstances have her moving in like with Raven's family. But I just find it like interesting, like the kind of contrast to when she's in charge versus like when the Nightmare takes over. And I really like it. I absolutely love it. And I also like the fact that she's still her enough to know that like what's happening shouldn't be happening, and she shouldn't be feeding into it, but like she just can't help it because it is what it is, right? Raven, I adore him, okay? So he's very closed off and like kind of like really, you know, really thinks of him, like not thinks, but stays to himself. And like you slowly start to see him like open up to her. You slowly start to see him like, you know, tell her things, and you see him starting to trust her and to start giving her more and more information that you wouldn't necessarily expect him to give her. But as a reader, you understand that like he's falling for her in a way that he's not prepared for, and he knows that there is something more here, and he figures if he just puts enough trust in her that she in turn will trust him as well. And yeah, it's so interesting, and I really liked it. And I loved all the castles and like the history of everything and how it kind of all comes to play like now in like the present tense. And I just really enjoyed like the relationship between Raven and Elspeth, because you know, here are two people who've been pretending for a very long time, and here are two people who are living lives like based off of what other people want from them and not necessarily the lives that they want to live. And you see two people coming together that are pulled together in a way that neither of them can understand. And I don't think it's really been expressed to us like why they feel compelled to be together, but just that they are, right? So I don't know, I loved it so much. And I also really liked the fact that like you see her really just grow into the fact that like she knows she's turning into something that she's not necessarily prepared to turn into or wanting to turn into, but at the end of the day, like is just really starting to give herself over to what she perceives as the inevitable. So before I accidentally spoil this book for you, I'm gonna go, but just know that this is 5 stars and I absolutely loved it. I'm loving every minute of it. Shout out to Jodie, okay? Because I've had this on my TBR since the beginning of the year, and thanks to her and this reading vlog, we have finally jumped on the bandwagon. So I am actually right now gonna go and grab book 2 off my shelves and start reading it because I feel like I need answers, and I'm really actually excited that this is just a duet and not like a 10 book commitment I've made myself to. So I'll catch you in a little bit. Like I said, you'll probably see me reading the second book. I may or may not pop in, or just like you might see some reactions. But I'm trying so hard not to spoil it because that's not the point of this vlog. Anyways, gotta go. The second book is calling me. All right, besties, I'm here to close the vlog out because I have officially read all of the books that Jodie gave me as my TBR. If you hear the clicking in the background, that's my pup Belle. She's been really restless tonight. I'm not really sure what her deal is. But anyways, I finished Cash by Jessica Peterson, and I definitely loved this one. Solid 4-star read for me. Okay, so this is a story of Cash. So he's the foreman at Lucky Ranch. And Molly, who is the daughter of the owner, and Molly's dad, who is the one who passes away in the beginning of the story, leaves the ranch to Molly with the stipulation that she has to come to the ranch and like she has to live on it. Now there's a lot of drama surrounding the ranch because like her mom is like literally packed Molly up and left that ranch because she hated living there. And so Molly has this like really warped perception of like life on the ranch or like what it would be like and that she was gonna hate it. And then she gets out there and her and Cash are definitely like little enemies. Like he finds her attractive at the beginning. She definitely does as well, but they're not seeing eye to eye on like what needs to happen or any of that. So like they're definitely struggling to kind of come to a consensus about what's going to happen. Cash living in fear because he thought that the ranch was going to be left to him and that he was going to be able to buy the ranch right next to it, which is his family's ranch, but his parents died when he was 19 and he had to take care of his 4 younger siblings. So it's all of that happening for him, and then Molly having to come back and confront the fact that like she should have had a conversation with her dad earlier and she shouldn't have let her mom's like perception of her father like twist how she felt about him. But I will defend her in the sense that like she was a child and her primary caregiver was her mother, and if you're hearing this one thing from that person and you're being kept from the other person, it's really hard to build any other type of like opinion of anybody. So I definitely read this book in like 24 hours. So I started it, fell asleep one night, and then like the next night finished reading it. So I had such a good time with this one. I'm really hoping that she writes, I know Wyatt's book, who's the brother, one of the brothers of Cash. I know that his book is already out and I definitely need to read that one. But I'm really hoping that the other brothers get an opportunity, especially my man Sawyer, because I love a single dad. And you know, what's really cute to me and what I really liked about this really was just the camaraderie and like the family aspect of this, right? So it's Molly's an only child and she's lived with her mom, and her mom is, you know, really high up in her job and like owns her own business and is always busy. And so she like, you know, Molly comes to the ranch and there's this foreign concept because like here are these brothers and like they'll do anything for each other and they care so deeply for each other. And, you know, like really just understanding life on the ranch and really getting to be a part of that changed a lot for her. And I loved that. I loved that it changed her. And I loved that it really gave her an opportunity to see what it's like kind of on the other side, right? First of all, but also second of all, there is this scene, and all I'm going to say, the bar scene Anyways, I wasn't, but I was just, woo, because he's like, don't let your temper get the best of you. Don't. And then he does. And then everything just between the two of them explodes. And it's just, that's definitely, even like bar none, the end scene when she announces, like unveils her like true plans for everything like that. Straight up, the bar scene's my favorite. And nobody's going to tell me otherwise, because it's the scene that literally brought the two of them together. So I'm obsessed with it. It was such a good book, and it was a really good like first cowboy book of 2025, because yes, friends, I started this vlog in 2024, but guess what? We finished it in 2025, and that's okay. That's okay. Okay. So definite bangers. I'm going to put a graphic up right here to show you guys what I read in this one. And Jodie did an excellent job of picking a TBR for me, because I enjoyed all of the books I read for it. So obviously Lights Out was a 5-star for me. One Dark Window was a 5-star for me. And then this one was a 4-star for me. So shout out to Jodie for some amazing recs. Yes, One Dark Window, I definitely read to Twisted Crowns, and I definitely gave that one 4 stars, and 5 stars, and I definitely cried at the end of it. Okay? So I hope that summarizes everything for you, because I went through it, ladies and gentlemen, but it was so good, and I had such a good time reading these books. And she hasn't given me a rec that I've hated so far. So she's definitely somebody that is giving some solid recs to me. So she will be linked in the description box below, because obviously these are my Booksta friends who are giving me these recommendations. So I am super excited about that. And yeah, so we're wrapping up the vlog. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comment section below if you've read any of these same books. And if you haven't, get on it. I'm now officially on Masked Talk, because I couldn't stop liking some of those videos. So thanks a lot for that one, Jodie. I've already let her know how I feel about that. But you know, thank you so much for watching. Please hit the subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. I would absolutely love to have you as part of my bookish community. And as always, I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.